Here at the Sportsbook of Charleston in North Charleston, where we'll talk Citadel basketball over the next hour with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Conroy. Coach's Show brought to you by Cutwater Spirits as we get ready for the Bulldogs to return home this week with always two fun games at the McAllister Fieldhouse with the two in-state rivals coming to town. Furman on Wednesday night at 7 p.m., Wofford 1 p.m. on Saturday. We'll look ahead to those games. We'll look back at the past road trip and everything else involving Citadel basketball. The head coach, as Coach Conroy is with us. Coach, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just had another good practice, and it's going to be an exciting week to finish off the home season. And with Furman and Wofford, should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, certainly. We'll look ahead to those games, but we always start the night by looking back at what was over this past week since the last Coach's Show. And by the way, if you are with us in person tonight, or if you come out to future shows, we're here each Monday. You can always submit a question for Coach. We'll get to those questions later on as well this evening. And come out and join us for future Mondays here. The season's winding down. We only have a few of these left, but come out and come hang with us and submit a question in person and talk some Citadel basketball. Let's look back at this past week. We were here last Monday, of course. The team then went on the road to Chattanooga and to Sanford, 82-63 at Chattanooga, 76-70 were the two finals. Before we dive into those games and some of the performances, just broadly looking back overall, what'd you think of what you saw from your team out on the road this past week?
Well, I thought there were some really good segments of basketball. We just, unfortunately, weren't able to put it together consistently for 40 minutes like you need to do on the road against two quality teams. I thought Chattanooga really came out and shot the ball extremely well. And we've defended the three-point line very well all year long ourselves, but they were able to get, score quite a few points beyond the arc, and credit them for that. I thought there were stretches in both those games that we played very, very well. And then, the Sanford game, it was just a matter of our turnovers. But other than that, I thought our offense was really efficient when we took care of the basketball, and we put ourselves in a position to win that game toward the end.
Yeah, certainly. Let's go first back to the Chattanooga game where, it was an evenly played game there for the first half. What'd you see? You mentioned trying to get that consistent 40 minutes. What'd you see as the difference between the first half and the second half there Wednesday night in Tennessee?
Well, there was they made a shot toward the end of the half and stretched their lead a little bit, and then we came out just those first few minutes of the second half. We just did not have what we needed to defend that three-point line. And they came out and had a little spurt and got away from us a little bit. But I thought they were a very different team than they were early in the year when we played them here. They were picked, one of the preseason favorites. We beat them with Jake Stevens, their all-league MVP player here at our place, and then we went on the road and they really kind of changed their style where they get up and down the floor very fast and they shoot the three. And it was one of those nights where the three-point shot was really going for them. And they made us pay from beyond the arc, especially in transition.
And then the Sanford game as referenced, the team, you guys at one point, they were down 15 with less than 4 minutes left. You storm back, you make it a one-possession game. If Colby McAllister was just an inch or two back, it could have been really interesting coming down to the very last play of that game against Sanford. So, again, when you talk about, putting together 40 full good minutes of basketball, when we look at that Sanford game, what was kind of the key there late that your team it's similar to, it reminded me of UNCG. I said at the time, if there was 5 minutes more in that UNCG game, things could have gotten really interesting. You took a 22-point game, turned it to single digits. I'd say the same about Sanford, where if there's 5 more minutes, those fans were already nervous. What'd you like that you saw from your team specifically down the stretch against Sanford?
Well, I thought we were able to get a few more people into the game early on, and we were a little fresher toward the end of the game, which was a good thing for us, and we'll need that going down the stretch. But it was the same thing. Where some of our younger guys, I think, were just a little inconsistent in that game. But once they found their comfort level, and we had everybody clicking on the same page, toward the end there, we were playing really good basketball. And when we were down 15, I didn't feel like the game had been played where the spread should be that, and so it didn't surprise me that we made a run and got it tighter, and would have loved to have seen a call here or there or a shot here or there, and could have got really interesting.
How do you take what you saw in those final minutes and, for lack of a better term, I guess, maybe apply some urgency to the guys to say, when we play like this for full 40 minutes, we could be really dangerous. How do you take that little portion of the game and make the guys aware that, we need to stretch this out a little longer maybe?
Well, and that's what we worked on film today. We showed a lot of film as far as just those teachable moments where we did a lot of really good things, and then maybe one possession we go under a screen and Glover hits a three for Sanford, big play, and you have to have the mental toughness, the physical endurance, all those kind of things, and be locked in as a team for an entire 40 minutes and keep playing it the way you were playing it. I thought we did a great job of really bottling it up. We caused Sanford 15 or 16 turnovers in the game ourselves. Mainly because we were aggressive defensively. And, I just thought that we just a couple possessions here and there. And, again, it's a sign of, some inexperienced guys. But we're getting to the point where it's so late in the season now where you have to have enough experience. We've had enough battles. We've had enough games and contests where you can't use that as a reasoning at all. And you've got to find a way to come through.
You mentioned turnovers on both sides of the floor. When you look back at these last two games, 20-plus turnovers in each of those two road games, what'd you see when you rewatched the film that led to some of those miscues?
Well, I thought very different. I thought Chattanooga, we just weren't early in the game. We weren't disciplined enough with our transition and our attack, and a lot of those were, we really hurt ourselves, just shot ourselves in the foot. It wasn't anything that they caused with their defense. It was we were really careless early on. I thought Sanford, credit them, I thought they came out and really tried to pressure us, really jump us with their quickness and their depth. And we're better at handling that pressure. We've been really good at taking care of the ball up until these last two games. But I've preached it all year long. At some point, your will, your willingness, your toughness to hang on to the basketball and be sure with it is going to be tested when you're on the road. And certainly that came up against Chattanooga and Sanford. And when you turn it over like that on the road, you don't really give yourselves a great chance of winning.
What's that like to play a Sanford team where they press pretty much the entire 40 minutes? You're on the road. It's a tough place to play. The Citadel program has not won there since 2017, and they've now won. Sanford's won 14 straight conference games at home. So what's it like for a team to have to deal with that type of pressure and even just trying to speed up the game of a team pressing you for all 40 minutes?
Well, I thought once we settled in, we were able to get them. We attacked them for some easy baskets and things like that. We didn't come out, and perhaps it was because we did such a good job of handling their pressure here at home that our young guys thought it would be just that easy, or that was the formula to do it on the road. And you just have to understand that on the road, with a home crowd behind them, teams play with a little more energy, a little more urgency. They're a little bit sharper in their coverages at this time of year because it is later in the year, and so you have to be even better and more alert, more aware. And I just thought there was a couple early on where we just our awareness and our alertness were not good enough.
Speaking of being on the road, it was a bit of a long trip. The team left Tuesday, didn't come back until Saturday night. You remained on the road in between the two games, and obviously not the first time. You think back to the trip to New Orleans and everything else here in between throughout the season. But to spend the 5 days on the road like that, the team activities, went bowling and everything. How important and how good is that for just the guys, for the roster, for the team, even late in a season like that, to have that time on the road together and continue to bond and get to spend time with one another away from the actual basketball court?
Well, I think all of it's important. I think it's important you keep a structure for them when they're on the road. And there's a time for free time. There's a time for relaxing. There's a time to practice really hard. And there's a time to get studying done. And, so hopefully we were able to, keep a little structure on our guys and make sure that they covered all their bases and we're still excelling in the classroom like they have all year.
We'll get ready for the week ahead for the Bulldogs as they're back home with Wofford and Furman coming to town this week. Always fun games, final home games of the season for the Citadel, and we'll also continue to look back at some of the performances of a few Bulldogs here over the past couple of games. It's the Coach's Show with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Conroy. The Coach's Show brought to you by Cutwater Spirits. We're at the Sportsbook of Charleston here in North Charleston, where we are each Monday throughout the basketball season talking Citadel basketball, and we'll continue to do so after our first time out here all across the Citadel Sports Network. every Monday throughout the basketball season, so unfortunately only a couple of these left as we wind down the year. The Bulldogs are back home this week. Come out and see them. Come out and join us at the McAllister Fieldhouse as the Citadel welcomes in Furman Wednesday night, 7 p.m., and then Wofford Saturday afternoon, 1 p.m. for the final home games of the year. So just 2 chances left to see the Citadel in person. Of course, you can always join us up in Nashville for the conference tournament, or if you want to make the trek to Tennessee or Mercer for the final regular season games. But come out and see the Citadel this week at home against Furman and Wofford. We'll look ahead to those games coming up in just a little bit. But first, Coach, I'll ask you about a couple of guys and performances from the last couple of games. First and foremost, there was a bit of a scary moment there late in that Sanford game when Stephen Clark went down with what looked like a non-contact injury, but he did come back into the game. So that was good to see, because I'm sure anytime something like that happens, with the amount of injuries we've seen watching games over the years, your first thought is probably always the worst case scenario. So obviously, let me state the obvious. Glad that Steven seems to be okay.
No question, and he's fine. It was a little bit of a scary moment there, but I think he got tripped up a little bit and therefore lost his footing and went down hard. He plays so many minutes and has been so durable for us. Would have been a big blow, obviously to see him go down, but also unfortunate. And you want to see him with as much as he's done, as well as he's played this year. Be great to see him really finish the year strong.
No Jackson Price these last couple of games, so I asked you about it on the radio. But, Brady Spence, I thought, especially against Chattanooga, he had a season-high 8 points, and I think it was only 11 minutes. He was very efficient. And then even Saturday against Sanford, he made both shots. I think he made every shot on the road trip. He went something like 6 of 6. Just what did you see from Brady stepping in here these last couple of games?
Brady gives us a little bit of physicality, helps keep a little bit of the heat off of Steven on the inside, does a good job of positioning, and he, we call him screen assist. He might not get a bunch of assists passing the basketball, even though he does handle the ball well, especially on handoffs and things on the perimeter, dribble handoffs, if you will. But he uses his body. He positions himself well. A lot of times you'll see Steven on the break in transition, dribbling down, and all of a sudden things kind of open up, and he gets all the way to the rim for a layup. And if you go back or you're watching closely, you'll see that it was Brady doing the dirty work and running to the rim, sealing his guy, screening them off. Him and David Maynard are both very good at that, and it's a key part of what we do offensively. Brady's maybe our best at doing that. So along with finishing some shots around the rim, providing some rim protection, Brady can have a big impact down the stretch here for us.
A.J. Smith is another guy who, I thought played well on the road as well. He went through a little bit of a lull there for a couple of games where the shots weren't falling, points were down, shooting percentage was down, but then had a nice night with 11 points and a career-high 7 rebounds against Chattanooga, came back and statistically put up some good numbers Saturday against Sanford. I'm sure, with a freshman, you have some of those growing pains, a good night and maybe a little bit of a down night, but what did you see from A.J. that stood out here over the last couple of games on the road?
Well, AJ's a gifted scorer, and he has his confidence back a little bit, and so you can always count on him getting that ball to the rim, near the rim, putting pressure on the opponent by driving into the paint, and he can finish shots around there in a variety of ways. So, gifted scorer. He's learning all elements of the game. Fantastic young man, as you've heard him here on the radio show and things like that. He's got a bright future ahead for us, but I do, he's one guy. He brings a physical element to how we play, and against some of the teams that really pressure us or have those long athletes, he can match up with them and get us some paint touches.
We talked about this last week with AJ, so not speaking out of turn, and it's something that pundits always talk about with rookies and professional leagues and maybe freshmen, but the idea of the game slowing down. You obviously played in college as well. You were a freshman at one point. Maybe you went through an experience like that as well, but how important is that for the young guys when they start to feel the game at this level? When you go from high school to college, you start to feel it slow down, and how much easier does that make for a player at this level?
Oh, it really is true. I think experience, minutes on the floor, there's just no substitute for them. It's extremely valuable. Every rep, I tell our guys, matters. And so, whether it's beginning of the game or end of the game, or whether the game is out of reach or we're up big, it really doesn't matter. Every rep matters, because you're putting into that memory bank of muscle memory, but also just seeing plays develop as you're out there on the floor and the speed that it happens. And at this level, every time you go up a level, the speed increases because of the height, the length of the athletes that are out there, but also the skill level and the ability to spread the floor and make you pay for mistakes. And so there's no question that the game slows down with experience. And as these guys go into late February, you kind of see that with some of the freshmen.
I asked you this Saturday, but different audience and a chance to expand on it as well. You have a lot of guys this year playing more minutes than they ever have, whether it's the transfers like Austin Ash, Elijah Morgan, or even freshmen like we were just talking about with your last answer there, making that transition to the college game and playing as much as they are. When you get towards this time of the year with all the games under their belt, do you do anything different just to try to manage loads this time of year?
Well, you're certainly aware of it, and you taper practice times for sure. You still have to get your work done in practice, but you also try to, maybe get the same work done through a different drill or change the variety of practice up just a little bit. Your core things, you have to get those done, and sometimes there's boring old repetitions are just part of it. But you try to spice it up a little bit as a coach. If you're working on shooting, maybe it's a different shooting drill, things like that. And then also, as you mentioned, when we're on those trips together, if there's some time, we try to be really efficient with their time because it is such a long season for them. And then we try to do some things where we get away and have a little bit of fun.
Austin Ash, let me just highlight him because he led the way Saturday in scoring with 21 points. He hit 5 more threes. We talked about that run your team went on late in Sanford against Sanford to make things really interesting. I guess it also helps when you have a guy like Austin where he got hot there. He hit back-to-back threes. Obviously, he doesn't need much space to get a shot off. He can be in the parking lot and still make the shot from beyond the arc. When you have a firecracker like that in Austin when he gets hot, I'm sure that certainly helps a team try to make a comeback like you guys did Saturday.
He's a handful for other teams, and you see the effort and energy they put out to guard him and take away those threes. And if they let their guard down just a little bit, that's all the crack he needs, and he can put points on you in a hurry and from deep. And so always a threat out there. It helps us with our offense throughout, even when he's not scoring, because of the spacing that he provides the other players and their ability to move around. But I always marvel. They let their guard down just a little bit, and he's gonna start firing away.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as a random little side note, I know Larry Ward, who was the voice of the Citadel in the 80s, he had this position back during your playing days, worked for the same guy I worked for, has the same position, yada, yada, yada. He's been with Chattanooga for a long time. He said that was the first time he's seen you since your playing days after the game against Sanford. Must have been a blast from the past to see Larry.
It was great. I looked back and I saw Larry sitting by our bench, and you do a double take because you're like, wait a minute. At some point it feels natural that he's sitting there, right, by your bench, and then at the other point you say, no, he's not supposed to be there, But no, great to see him, and he had some. Great, unique calls, and we used to listen to those all the time. But he had a different nickname for everybody, and players were always interested in hearing what his latest takes were going to be.
Yes, he shared, and I forgive me for not remembering. Do you remember what his nickname was for you?
Well, he would call me the Colonel a lot, but even though that was my rank when by my senior year, he was calling me that early on when I was a point guard as a freshman.
Yeah, that's a good one. It was good to see Larry as he's working with the Chattanooga women's team. They were there to finish off the doubleheader. When we come back here on the Coaches Show, we'll look ahead to the upcoming week for the Citadel. As already referenced here in the hour a couple of times, 2 fun and interesting matchups when Furman and Wofford come to town, and you get that cross-state, if you will, in-state rivalry with some of their fans creeping into the McAllister Fieldhouse as well. We'll look ahead to those games, final home games of the year for the Citadel, so come out and join us this week. We'll start to preview those when we come back. It's the Coaches Show with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Conroy. Coaches Show brought to you by Cutwater Spirits, as we're out here at the Sports Book of Charleston in North Charleston. We'll come back with more after this here all across the Citadel Sports Network. Book of Charleston in North Charleston, talking Citadel basketball. The Coaches Show brought to you by Cutwater Spirits. Come out and join us in person here each Monday. We got a couple of these left with the season winding down. I believe we're down to the final 3 now because we have just 3 weeks left here in the basketball season, the scheduled season to this point. See what happens in Asheville. And the Bulldogs are home this week to take on Furman Wednesday night, Wofford Saturday afternoon, final home games of the year. So come out and join us at the games this week. If you come out and join us at the Coaches Show, you have a chance to submit a question for Coach. And we got a handful of those where Coach will make you run the gamut here. We got a little bit of everything. First, before we get to some of these questions, because this will lead to the first one, did you have a chance to sit down and watch the Super Bowl last night?
I did. My wife and I, we were at home. We went and got something to eat right before. We knew it would be crowded out there, but we sat down and watched the Super Bowl. My wife's a football fan, so she enjoys watching it. It was a good game.
Yeah, it was a good game.
Fun to watch. I didn't have a rooting interest either way. I just enjoy watching both those teams play, and our players were pretty split. I took a little poll, gave them a little quiz, if you will, the night before we played Sanford. One of the questions was who's going to win the Super Bowl. I kind of wanted to see if they would actually take a vote or if some of the more dominant guys on the team would just write a name up there. But they actually took a little poll and came up. They thought the Eagles were going to win.
Yeah, I thought so too. And the Eagles had to let it slip away in the second half. A big talking point was the holding call at the end of the game that allowed the Chiefs to kick the game-winning field goal, which that's why it leads me to this question about if you thought the holding call at the end of the game there against the Eagles defense was the proper call when the Chiefs kicked that winning field goal.
I would have liked to have seen the flag held on to there. I would have liked to see how that would have played out. We were just talking about this at practice, and kind of the one thing are even though it's sometimes it's the right play, and everybody on the Chiefs was pointing hold, and the ball looked like it was thrown out that way, like it looks like it's long, and certainly they wouldn't miss by that much unless he was held. So, but it's kind of like in basketball when you're up 3 and you foul. And you make them go to the line and shoot. And nobody wants to see that. Everybody wants to, even though that might be the smart play, everybody wants to see that game-winning attempt and those kind of things. And I think we all would have liked to have seen just how that would have played out. I think Chiefs probably still win, but I would have loved to have seen how it played out.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that was the reason for the disappointment. And that was going to lead to my next question, but it seemed like you just answered it there. The idea of at the end of the game, like you said, you'd like to see the players decide it, and maybe the refs, swallow the whistle a little bit more and let a little bit more go, as opposed to having the game be settled to the free throw line.
But also the strategy of intentionally going down and not scoring the touchdown, those kind of things that all play in. And I think the disappointment came from it certainly wasn't a dud of a Super Bowl. Those two teams were playing at a high level, both quarterbacks playing at a high level. You kind of got in the mode of wanting to see them really shoot it out there at the end. And it came down to, being smart and playing it the right way and taking a knee and not going in the end zone and things like that. But boy, it was fun to watch those two teams go at it.
Yeah, sure was. Commercials are not the same as they used to be. And mixed reviews in the halftime report. Just the halftime show. As a random sidebar, Super Bowl party. You're going to a Super Bowl party. What is or if someone's hosting a Super Bowl party, they ask you, what's the number one thing they need to make sure they have to make sure it's a good Super Bowl party?
Well, for me, maybe this is the coach in me, but I need to have a clear sight of the TV and hear the sound of the TV. The commercials without the volume and everybody talking and people not paying attention to the game. I need to have enough rooms with TVs in them that everybody has a clear sight of a TV with sound.
I like it. Let's move along with these questions. AJ asked, if you could add any current or former NBA player to your roster, who would it be?
Wow. Current or former?
Yeah. Any NBA player ever to come suit up?
I guess if I had to go former, and not thinking, and obviously this is I'm going to name one of the greatest players of all time, but not getting into the LeBron, Michael Jordan, just whether it's just add the GOAT, for sake. I think with our team, if you could add a Bill Russell type player to our team, a rim protector, a rebounder, that solves two things that I think the rest of our team. You talk about a most valuable player. I think the rest of our team, what they do well would even be more enhanced, and you would be like, wow, those are really good players because they have that complementary piece, even though he's a great player. So I would go former player, I'd go Bill Russell. Current player, just because it'd be a lot of fun to watch. I'd go Steph Curry and we'll let him and Austin Ash see who's going to just bomb it when they cross half court.
That's right.
I do have a great memory of Steph Curry. Now, we had some battles. We were 15-5 in the league the one year. We would have won it any other year, but him being in the league. And so, but I remember we beat them once, and there was another game he was injured, and we went to their place. I think we were the last team to beat them there. Like, we had some really good battles against them, and there was a game he was so good in transition. And but he also had another point guard who played in the NBA, Jason Richard. Like, they were really, really good, even besides Steph. And he came across half court and he looked he saw the defense we were playing. I had kind of the big guy and our point guard were kind of bracketing him. And he looked over the bench and he looked at me and he shot it from like this C and made it in McAllister Fieldhouse and just looked over at me like, I'm not sure that's going to work either, Coach. But no, a lot of fun. It was a great era in Southern Conference basketball because you'd see the lines forming up no matter where he went, people wanting to get in and watch him play.
Yeah, that's going to be my follow-up, and I guess teams to a certain degree are dealing with that with Austin Ash because of his range. What do you do as a coach to try to defend that? Because I imagine you don't want to bring the defense out too far. How do you try to guard a guy who can shoot it from really anywhere on the floor?
And I think they've just in general, I'm not complaining about the officiating, but they've been awfully physical with him. I think he gets, he really gets, roughed around a little bit, trying to cut and move and things like that. They hold him and all that. But it's amazing the space he provides, on that court for the rest of our guys. And, I love the fact that he plays with such enthusiasm and loves the game so much.
You said you may not have wanted to get into it, but it is a question here from Dawson. Who's the greatest of all time, Michael Jordan or LeBron James? Who would you take?
I'm a Jordan guy.
I am too.
So
I would say Jordan. It was funny when we were out to eat with the team. I guess that would have been Friday night. They were debating this, of course. It's a debate as old as LeBron's career at this point. And then the conversation also turned to greatest college basketball player of all time. And shout out to Elijah Morgan for dropping Pete Maravich, which was very good for kids that are currently in college.
That's a Louisiana guy talking up right there, but that's good.
He's a little biased, but still, to have that frame of reference to go back that far for a kid in college. I'll ask you that then, I guess. Who would you say, or at least is in the conversation when you talk about greatest college player of all time?
Wow.
I do think Pete Maravich is a good one.
It is, and I'm gonna. This is gonna make me sound really old, but I'm gonna tell you this is like my first recollection of basketball, and they were so dominant. And I can remember because I grew up in Chicago, and on the south side of Chicago, Irish Catholic. Like everybody was a Notre Dame fan and that kind of thing. And I can remember UCLA being dominant with their 88-game winning streak, and I remember Bill Walton playing and watching him, and then what he did in the Final Four and those kind of things. And there wasn't that many games on. It was like a game of the week back then. Yeah. And I just remember being in awe of Bill Walton when he was playing in college and thinking, how can you win that much? And then his numbers were ridiculous. Like what he did in the Final Four and all those kind of things, he really had incredible college numbers.
Is that the team that really drew you to the sport of basketball?
Well, it wasn't UCLA. I loved watching those Notre Dame games back then, and that kind of stuff. But Notre Dame had a great rivalry with them and knocked off the number one team in the country in 1973. They ended their 88-game winning streak. I'll never forget that. I watched that game, and that's really the first game I remember watching from start to finish and being kind of mesmerized by the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a cool memory. Kelly asks, what's the best type of screen for an offense? Best type of screen that you would use?
Well, that's a great question. We're kind of known, nowadays so many people talk about ball screens, and pick on the balls and things like that. It's dominated. It's come from the NBA and it's dominated the college game as well. We have been known through my first tenure here and now starting to get known again, like we set a lot of flare screens. We haven't set as many this year as we will or have, but that's a screen that we really like. We like to spread that floor, east and west, if you will, and we probably do more screening off the ball than a lot of teams still do. It used to be more prevalent with the motion and things like that, but we still get our fair share of back screens and flare screens. I like any screen coming that it's coming from behind them and they don't see it.
Yeah, you get a lot of those open cutters to the basket for layups that we've seen from your offense here throughout the year. Patrick asks, just in general, how do you inspire the team?
That's a great question, and I think that changes with the year. It changes with what's going on in the season, where they're at individually. I think there's that a really, really key component is keeping your finger on the pulse individually of every player. I love to watch them come in the gym each day, just watch the body language, look for signs of that body language during the course of a game and try to help them manage and get through that. But then there's the collective. There's the team. And, right now we're at a phase where we have a terrific opportunities ahead of us. We have the best team in the league coming into our place on Wednesday night. Anytime you play at home, it should be special, and you have a rivalry game against Furman. This is there you go. This is a great opportunity to make our mark in that rivalry, if you will. And then we have the 3 teams that are right above us in the standings. So if you want to make a move and get out of that first day in the Southern Conference Tournament from the seeding purposes, you're playing everybody head to head. And I've said all along, what I love about Southern Conference is you play a true round robin schedule, which almost no leagues do anymore. You play everybody home and away. And here we have 2 at home, 2 on the road. As we come down the stretch, our guys should be awfully excited. So I try to talk to them about those kind of things because I think sometimes with all the noise out there and everything coming at them, they kind of forget. They're either thinking in the past or they're looking down the road. They forget about what's right in front of you. And that one game on Wednesday night is a terrific opportunity in and of itself.
Jimmy V tells the great story during that iconic speech about how he tried to copy Vince Lombardi at his first game and give the big rah-rah speech going into the locker room. For you as a coach, is it the inspiration that you pull from for your team? Is it like a day-to-day basis, or is it also day-to-day? But I guess what I'm asking, are you a big locker room pregame rah-rah speech guy?
I would say that if you came in our locker room before a game, right before, I don't think you would walk out and be like, "Wow, I'm gonna write that down." Like that was a great quote. I try to, before the game, we try to keep it very simple. Let them focus on exactly what we need to do, task at hand, and try to keep it even keel. I think it's one of the things that's made us over the years a really good road team is that we're not going to ride that roller coaster of emotion up and down home or road. We kind of keep things the same in a routine. Having said that, I'm a big believer in showing them video outside of our team or a motivational snippet here or there or a quote they can think about or just kind of bring things into context for them and let them know where they stand as far as when's the last time we had a sweep, when's the last time we had a road win, or things like that. So looking for every lever to push, but right before the game, not so much that rah-rah speech. But this time of year, I would definitely lean toward what's the name of the movie. I love the movie. I love the speech. They had it on a commercial last night about the inches. We're looking for inches everywhere, and so part of that is motivation too. We're looking for every inch of that we can get and push ourselves out of.
Lastly, Stephanie asks, and I like this question because it's not always maybe who you anticipate. Who has stepped up the most throughout this season as the biggest leader of the team?
I think you have to go with Stephen Clark. I think he's the guy who's been here before at the Citadel and has the most experience. We're not a very experienced team of playing at the Citadel. He has our most experience, and so I think our guys look to him. But I think I talk to our guys a lot about leadership and also being a follower and being a good teammate. And there are different times you have to take different roles. You could be a really good leader on our team, like David Maynard is a great leader by example on our team. And there's times I think in practice, he's older, he's wiser, he knows what needs to be done. But David might not be in that play at the end of the game. Maybe it's Austin Ash and Steven in a 2-man game on one side of the floor, and who's going to take that game-winning shot, and David might not even be in the game. So how's he going to lead? Austin has a great passion and brings an energy every day that's kind of unmatched, and so he kind of leads in that way. But we have other guys in that locker room that, Dylan Ingram's a guy that doesn't play as much. He has some leadership. Like I tell him, there's a time to be a leader and a time to follow and be a team guy, almost within every one of those. No question. Like 20 years from now, we look back, and I tell the guys, there's going to be 15 leaders. They're going to be leaders within their family, the professions, their communities. That's just what the Citadel is all about, and these guys certainly exemplify that. So it's not that but there's times also that you need to be able to be a follower and part of a team, and I think that's another great thing that the Citadel teaches you, and that's why you go through that 4-year system, and there's a time to be a follower as well.
Along those lines, last thing before we hit our last time out, we'll come back and look ahead to the games this week, but it just jogged my memory that On the trip, on the way to Alabama, the team stopped and was able to have a meal, share a meal, and get to meet with some of the Citadel alum in that area, which is always a cool thing to do. I've worked for a number of different schools over the years in my career, and in my experience, nobody does that like the Citadel, where you have these passionate alum all over that always welcome in the team and love to get to see the guys and spend some time with them and are just always cheering on the program no matter where they are. But how important and cool is that to be able to do something like that where you get the team together for a meal with some of the alum in another state when you're on the road?
I think it's awesome, and I think it's one of the many reasons why playing at the Citadel is a unique experience and a special privilege. And John and Sharon Olszewski hosted us in Huntsville. Huntsville was a little bit off the path, but the passionate alums that are there and showed up at our games at Sanford and Chattanooga, and you saw at the dinner, just a terrific dinner, a lot of quality people who are very, very successful, and our guys get to meet them and see what it's all about. And I've always felt like once you get to know people, and it takes time, like for a freshman, but once you get to know the people associated with the Citadel and our fans and our alums, in my opinion, it's awfully hard to give in. Once you put that jersey on, it says Citadel on the front, and you know all the people behind it, it's hard to give in, and just it helps you give that little extra.
Yeah, great pride with the school and with those alum, and being able to spend some time with the players was very cool last week, I'm sure, for everyone involved. We'll come back, we'll wrap things up tonight, and get ready for this week for the Citadel, as they will take on Furman Wednesday night at the McAllister Fieldhouse in Wofford on Saturday. We'll look ahead to those games with the coach of the Bulldogs, Coach Conroy, when we come back. It's the Coach's Show, brought to you by Cutwater Spirits, as we're out here at the Sportsbook of Charleston in North Charleston. One final segment after this here, all across the Citadel Sports Network. Back on the Coaches Show as we wrap things up here tonight from the Sportsbook of Charleston in North Charleston, where we are talking Citadel basketball every Monday. You can come out and join us in person these last couple of weeks of the season. And when you come out in person, submit a question that we'll get to with Coach like we did last segment. The Bulldogs, it's their final homestand, final home games of the year here this week. Furman comes into the McAllister Fieldhouse Wednesday night at 7 p.m. and then Wofford Saturday afternoon at 1 p.m. So get your tickets and come out and join us, because it's always fun games when you have two of the teams there from the upstate come down here to the low country. And depending on which Citadel fans you talk to, they either dislike Furman the most, VMI the most, Wofford the most, dislike them all. So obviously big games here at home this week for the Citadel. Coach, let's talk about these games. Obviously, we've talked about it here on this Coach's Show previously, but the idea of getting to play a team a second time, you referenced it earlier tonight. I know it's something you like about this schedule, and it also provides, a second opportunity to go up against those teams. You played Furman and Wofford back-to-back on the road. I know the final scores weren't what you were hoping for, but now you get them here at your place this week. And as you referenced earlier, when it comes to Wofford and some of those other games, a chance to try to, pass some of the teams right ahead of you. So a good opportunity this week to have these two programs come to you here to finish out the home schedule.
Oh, great opportunity. And like I said, it starts on Wednesday night against the Furman team that's leading the league right now and has, been on a nice run last several years. So great opportunity for our guys, and one we're capable of meeting that challenge, and I'm excited to watch them play.
Let's go back to, if I make you think back to those first meetings in that first week of January, that game against Furman. Like you said, they're the best team in the conference record-wise. They've had a really good year. They've won now at this point even, I think it's like 6 straight on the road here in the conference. But if you go back to that first matchup with Furman, just what stands out about the way your team matched up with them up there on January 4th?
Well, I thought early on we got off to a slow start, but then we were able to get a lot of good shots around the basket. We were a little bit off balance and couldn't convert those shots, and they got out in transition a little bit. We didn't do the job we needed to do controlling tempo. Stephen Clark got in foul trouble. Until he fouled out of the game, though, it was a very competitive game, and I showed our guys some of those clips today. And then when he went out of the game, things kind of opened up a little bit for them, but for the most part, very competitive game, and one which we had our opportunities. We just need to take advantage of them.
And then Wofford was one of those games a couple days later, January 7th. It was a Saturday night. And look, not to make any sort of excuses, because I know you won't make any excuses, Coach, but if you go back and you look, Saturday night games, for whatever reason, have been tough for the Citadel basketball program over the past decade. People believe that because of what these students have to go through during the week, by the time you get to a Saturday night, it could be the end of a long week. Nonetheless, that Wofford game at Wofford, 77-57 was the final. Offensively was the slow start there at Wofford, if I remember correctly. What stood out about that game with the Terriers the first time at their place?
Well, I thought we had great looks. Austin had some really good looks that night. Several of our guys did. We just weren't able to convert those for whatever reason. During that stretch of those two games in the upstate, I thought our shooting, our offensive execution was just a little bit off. It wasn't that we weren't taking care of the basketball, just weren't real sharp with it, and it took us a long time to really score in that Wofford game.
Now, again, those were early in the conference schedule, the very beginning, so we talked about this last week because same idea with Sanford and the teams are so different and have progressed so much at this point in the year now that you're playing one another almost 2 months later. So whatever version we saw there in early January, imagine it'll be different here this week with Furman and Wofford coming to town. We always, at the end of the night here, I always ask you about keys. So I guess just overall for both these two games, when you look at your team and what you want to see from them this week, what are some of the most important things you want to see from your guys on the floor in the performances this week?
Well, we have to get to take care of the basketball. What we didn't do on the road, those two games, that was as poor as we've been in back-to-back games, taking care of the ball. And so we have to do that to give ourselves a chance. I think our half-court efficiency offensively and execution has really improved when we take care of the ball. So we have to make it that type of game and one where we control that tempo a little bit because of that. We score fast or we score slow. Based on what we need to do in that game and get that game to a manageable spot. Both these teams are explosive offensively themselves, and so we can't just get in a shootout with them, if you will.
Well, should be fun. Come out and join us. Get your tickets online. Come out and join us the day of. Get your tickets. Come in the building at the McAllister Fieldhouse and come watch the Citadel, because this is your last chance to see this basketball team at home here this season. But it's Wednesday night, 7 p.m., Saturday.
I need to hear a couple more beat Furmans from our crowd here. That's what I need to hear.
Can we get one more before we go?
Hey, beat Furman!
There we
you
go.
go. There you
Hopefully
go.
it was loud enough to come out over the radio as well. Appreciate it. Hopefully we see everyone out there at the McAllister Fieldhouse as well Wednesday night when the Bulldogs will certainly strive to beat Furman as well. And we'll be back here next Monday for the Coaches Show at the Sportsbook of Charleston in North Charleston. Coach, as always, appreciate the insight, appreciate the time, and best of luck this week.
Thank you. Go Dogs.
That's head coach Ed Conroy, who joins us here on the Coaches Show every Monday. Coaches Show brought to you by Cutwater Spirits from the Sportsbook of Charleston in North Charleston. We'll be back here next Monday. We'll see you out at the McAllister Fieldhouse this week. Furman, Wednesday night, Wofford, Saturday, and the coverage will be all here across the network as well. We'll see you at the McAllister Fieldhouse this week and next Monday for the Coaches Show from the Sportsbook of Charleston in North Charleston, here all across the Citadel Sports Network.
We have next week. We have 2 left, right? Yeah, the Monday before the tournament. Yeah.